You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kyle Wood, host of Art Smart and Who Arted. Right now, I'm asking you to help support this show by filling out the network survey at surveymonkey.com/r/airwave. The network is conducting this listener survey to help us improve our shows and find sponsors that you might actually be interested in. As an added bonus, if you take a few minutes to fill out the survey, you'll be entered to win a $500 Amazon gift card as our way of saying thank you. So please help us out and go to surveymonkey.com/r/airwave.
Feel like Who Art Ed.
Try to slice it.
Who Art Ed? Mr. Wood Art Ed me.
Yeah. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, where we explore visual arts in an audio medium. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be looking at Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun. Now, this particular image, her self-portrait, is one of 250 artworks on the AP Art History list. I've covered a number of artists and artworks from that list, and I actually put together a Spotify playlist of those works. Conveniently enough, you can also see an image of the work on this episode and every episode if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or any other platform supporting episode-specific cover art. Now, on to the actual topic. Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun was forced to flee France in a disguise and under the cover of darkness during the early stages of the French Revolution. Le Brun didn't have the opulent life of luxury that revolutionaries despised, but she had worked her way up to become Marie Antoinette's favorite portraitist, and the French Revolution was not the ideal time and place to be friends with the monarch. But that would come later. Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun was born in Paris on April 16, 1755. Her father was a portrait painter, and he taught her quite a bit before he died. Sadly, she was only 12 years old when that happened. It was obviously devastating. She was encouraged to continue developing her artistic skills, probably in part out of necessity, but there weren't a lot of options for women in that time. She wasn't able to get formal training at the academy. Nonetheless, by the age of 15, she was starting to get commissions for portraits and earning enough money to support herself, her mother, and her brother. At the age of 19, she suffered another setback as her success was noticed by the authorities. Her materials were seized because Elisabeth Vigée, at that time just Vigée, the Le Brun would come later, she had been operating a professional practice without membership in the academy or a guild. She quickly joined the Académie de Saint-Luc, which didn't admit a lot of women, but in case you haven't already guessed from the fact that I'm talking about her almost 300 years later, Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun was a standout talent. Just a year later, at the age of 20, she went from having her black market portrait studio shut down to being an official member of the court. In 1776, she married an art dealer, Jean-Baptiste Pierre Le Brun. An artist being married to an art dealer obviously would open a few doors for her, but it also presented some challenges. In the late 18th century, Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun was catapulted to fame when she painted a portrait of Marie Antoinette. 1778, she meets Marie Antoinette at the royal palace in Versailles. The queen had heard of Le Brun's talent and asked her to paint her portrait. The portrait was intended to be for the queen's brother, Emperor Joseph II of Austria. But Marie Antoinette loved it so much, she ordered copies to be made for Catherine the Great in Russia and for her own apartment in Versailles. The full-length portrait shows Marie Antoinette in an elaborate dress with layers of fabric and a feathered headdress. Around her, we see massive columns, the marble bust of her husband, Louis XVI. It's simultaneously soft and feminine, as well as a display of her power and status. The thing about Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun is she had a way of finding the best in her subjects. She would give them, let's say, the generous edit, omitting some minor imperfections, but still keeping it a truthful representation. Think of it as the 18th century version of Photoshop, but with a light touch to keep it plausible. Marie Antoinette loved the way Le Brun painted her, and from that point on, she was pretty much her official royal portrait painter. Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun painted 30 portraits of Marie Antoinette. Now, let's face it, if you have the Queen on your client list, your career's in pretty good shape. Or at least it is until said Queen is violently deposed. Then, maybe it's not so great to put her down as a reference. There had been a campaign against Le Brun in the French papers because of her association with Marie Antoinette. Not only that, but her marriage to that art dealer, Jean-Baptiste Le Brun, that had been a catastrophe, largely due to his gambling problems. So in 1798, Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun disguised herself. She took her daughter and left both her husband and France in the dead of night. She brought her daughter to Italy. Life as a single parent has never been easy, but Elisabeth Vigée Le Brun was resilient. She continued painting portraits for European nobility to support herself and her daughter. In her self-portrait from 1790, we see Le Brun giving herself that generous edit. Despite the hardships she had endured fleeing for her life just the previous year, she paints herself in a seemingly relaxed pose. She wears the type of free-flowing dress popularized by her previous client, Marie Antoinette, as she sits, brush in hand, turned away from the canvas to gaze out at the viewer. The painting seems casual with a slight smile. She seems gentle and friendly, but with just the slightest hint of a guarded pose as her painter's palette is tilted towards herself out of our view. I think there's something interesting about the way Vigée Le Brun seems to gaze out at the viewer, but the subject of the painting she's working on is looking out at her. The portrait, like the artist, seems light and relaxed at first glance. She's warm and inviting, yet underneath it all, we can see the careful construction of a woman who was talented, clever, and strong as steel.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.